Welcome, everyone. This is using the new normal to promote programs and schools as a part of the Global EdTech Academy, part of the gig going on between Microsoft and Q. And I hope you are excited to get a few ideas this morning. Hopefully they'll be helpful for you. If you are connecting from somewhere where it's not morning, good part of day to whatever it is for you. So what I am going to be talking about today really has to do with if we are working hard to tell the stories of our schools. This is something that is not specific, of course, to what we experience only in times when we can all meet, right? And so how do we adapt some of those ideas so that you can use them whether you're meeting in person or you are doing online instruction. So let's jump into some of these pieces as we go. Now, if you have ever seen me present before, you will know that I use a ton of images, and the images that I use are all taken from sources where it is legally allowable to use them for free. So either Creative Commons licensed or through sites such as Unsplash or Pexels, where they make these things available completely for free. I always try to cite my sources because I think we need to model such things. And with that, let's go on. If you're curious, about more about the images, then feel free to stick around afterwards, and we will talk more about that. So I am a former high school teacher. I was a high school teacher of Japanese language for many years. I was a middle school teacher of video production. I became a principal of a K-12 school and then an online high school. And then in 2005, I started the educational nonprofit Next Vista for Learning at nextvista.org. And I hope that you will give that a look because we have videos there created by students and teachers around the world that we're very happy to share. A short, student-focused library with the idea that this is a great way to inspire kids to see their own possibilities for being people who can share ideas. Now, you'll get these slides. What does that mean? That if you are in touch with me and interested, I am very happy to share these with you. This isn't, say, a prediction of understanding. So by all means, use the contact information at the end if you want to get back to these slides and use them yourself. Furthermore, it is just very good to meet you. So I hope that as you watch this, either in person or in a recording, that you are thinking very specifically about what it means to connect with people in a lot of different places. One of the best things about the circumstances we're in, and there's a lot of very tough and bad things about the pandemic, is that we are understanding at a new level the ability to reach out to others and to bring good ideas to our teams and our students and our schools. So thank you for joining today. So in leaping into this, I want to start with the idea of images. And in terms of talking about how you tell your stories, there are simple ways to use any given tool, and there are, I would say, more interesting ways to use them. And so what I'm going to do as I go through this is to try to get you in a space where you're thinking about, okay, well, how do I want to use these as a part, these different tools, these different ideas as a part of what I do in my classroom or at my school? So starting with images, there's lots of things about images that allow us to kind of stop and say, all right, that's good. We might be, for example, focused enough in the things that happen at our school to get pictures taken. So yeah, okay, let's make sure we get pictures, and we're going to share those pictures and things like that. And that's perfectly fine to do, of course. The question is whether you are taking the next steps in order to be able to use images to be able to tell your stories in ways that might be quite powerful. So as you will hear me say kind of again and again in this presentation, you're sharing some images online, great, but don't stop there. So as a way of talking about this, I want to say that, first of all, I see images as being like one of the easiest ways to bring technology into what you do as a teacher and a school leader in order to make much more interesting things happen. So I'll start by just giving an example that I love to give, and that has to do with how you start a class. So let's say you're starting class and the bell rings, beep, and so what happens? If you turn to the students and say, all right, everybody, settle down, bell just rang. All right, what I want you to do is I want to go over the main points of yesterday's class. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, you're certainly coming from a perfectly honorable place. That honorable place being that what you what you want is for them to be grounded in what's coming up. The question, though, is always, is there a difference between what you say and what they hear? And so what you said was, let's cover the main points of yesterday's class. What they hear is, I don't need to pay attention today because it'll be summarized for me tomorrow. Now, what we want is to kind of be in this space where we say, all right, well, let's never give that kind of impression. I mean, certainly, that would never be given intentionally, of course, but the point is that you can do some really cool things with images in order to ramp up kids' confidence, their ability to do different things that become the stories that you share as a part of the school. So let's think of a different way of starting class. So the bell rings. Beep. All right, everybody, what I want you to do is turn to your partner. And with your partner, I want you to talk about the main points from yesterday's class and how they relate to this image. Go. Now, as you look at this image, right, the chances are really, really good that your class yesterday wasn't focused on West Texas burying Cadillacs in the sand as an artistic statement. That chance is just very good that that was not what you were talking about. The disconnect between the picture and whatever it was you did talk about is actually the point. The point is that in getting them to talk to each other, what they may do is turn to each other, and the very first thing they say to each other is, "Hey, what was it? What was it we did yesterday? What was that?" And that's totally fine for them to be saying, I don't remember exactly what we talked about, because then together they might start into a pattern of, oh yeah, there was this, oh yeah, yeah, and that was connected to that. That active exploration of what the main points of the previous class were is really important for getting them in the space you want them to be in, which is prepped for what's coming up. So now they've had this kind of active start to class, and you go from being the teacher who spoon feeds them a certain amount of review to just making sure they don't forget anything really important. So just a simple image can really move them in a very creative direction. So if what you talked about yesterday, we were talking in the chat beforehand, Liz mentions that she teaches Algebra 1, right? And so with something like this, you could say, oh, okay, well, X equals the part of the Cadillac that is above ground, and Y equals the part of the Cadillac that's below ground, and X plus 1 equals 1 Cadillac, right? There's any number of ways of looking at this and looking at the people involved in the picture and the lighting and the color, anything like this, and to draw creative connections to what happens in class. So that's an opportunity to make sure that people, in not simply being asked to produce a correct answer, can bring a level of creativity and connection to what they're doing such that they become stories. Those stories become part of your professional development in terms of talking with each other in your grade level teams, your subject matter teams, in order to say, hey, this kid saw this and that. What do we think about that? And the ideas that students throw out in particular classes may become prompts in other classes. Additionally, this can become PR. So as you look at really creative kind of interpretations, they can become part of the stories of your school. Now, along those lines, one of the things that every school does fairly poorly, or I should say the vast majority of schools do fairly poorly, is get images from what happens in class. Now this can be in class in person or in class online, right? Through screenshots or shared images or anything like this. But one school, one of my favorite schools on the planet, it's Parklands College, a K-12 school in Cape Town, South Africa. They were facing this same thing. They're like, okay, well, we've got pictures of our sports stuff and our performing arts stuff, because that's all done for public and people take pictures and there we go. But we need more pictures from the classroom. So what should we do? Well, they decided a couple of years ago that they were going to start having their staff in the summer before school begins take a photography class together. Now, think through that a minute. If your teachers are getting together and they're learning just the basics of photography, and so lighting and angle and rule of thirds and things like this, they're developing a shared vocabulary for how to talk about what it is that they capture in their classes, which now means, ideally, of course, that they are getting pictures in the classroom. And when you have your meetings, your team meetings, your staff meetings, you start to share these and to talk about them, both from the standpoint of the shared vocabulary of the photography lesson and from the perspective of what does this tell us about our school? Can we get in and begin to really discuss this as a way of telling our stories? So it's a fairly simple idea, right? Okay, a photography class together. But it has this opportunity to capture content that can be useful in sharing your stories and to develop higher end conversations professionally on your team. So as we look at these different pieces, we're going to keep coming back to this idea. Here is something that we have. Here's how it's normally used. But don't stop there. Let's move from there to social media. So with social media, there are any number of ways that you may be sharing the stories of your school. If you would, toss into the chat right now just kind of ways that your school or you might be sharing stories from your school using social media. So maybe your school has a Facebook page. Maybe your school has an Instagram feed, something along these lines, where what you're doing is you're putting something out there. I'd be curious to know if you do it on a regular basis, things like that. I see Brian and Ventura, they've got a Facebook page, they've got a Twitter account, right? And how organized different schools are related to how they use these ideas is one of those pieces that can allow us to really see this. So I see Tim also joining in, says, Facebook and Twitter and weekly, sometimes more. Nice. The more you're kind of geared as a team to really look at sharing these things as often as possible, the easier it is to really begin to discuss stories in powerful ways, right? Liz in Arizona says also, same here, Facebook and Twitter. So in knowing that we should put some things out there that can be shared, because the issue is it shareable, right? So will people stop and say, is this something I can share? Facebook is particularly well suited up for that, right? For sharing things as you go. There's a lot of noise, of course, in Facebook, but that's going to be the case with anything that lots and lots of people are using. That's just two sides of a coin. But if you're sharing stuff on Facebook, I would say that make sure you don't stop there, right? That's not the only thing you should be doing. When we think about the idea of shareable, I hope you're also thinking about the possibilities of video. And so what I'm gonna do here is I want to play a little video for you. And what this means is that I am going to switch off from here. All right. And let's see. Or maybe I'm not going to do that. So here and here and here, and maybe not. All right, well, looks like what I'm doing is I am going back to my slides because that's the way I've got this working out, which is just fine. So I want to tell you a little bit about this particular slide, right? When we look at this idea of sharing a video via YouTube or anything like it. What we want to do is we want to be in a space where the video is something that can be put together very, very quickly. So you can imagine how you use something like PowerPoint to bring a number of pictures in, and then you use the tools within PowerPoint to create a video from them. In this particular case, the school used Adobe Spark and the free version of it in order to just pull some pictures together. The teacher's job was just to send a picture and send 2 sentences, and somebody else goes to the trouble of pulling the pictures into the tool and to narrate the particular pieces as a part of it. You end up with quite a strong video. I mean, it's an easy thing to pull together, and in doing that, you end up with a tool that you can use for both PR and PD purposes, like we talked about before. So as you begin to share videos, think in terms of very short videos. In this case, they go through, they say, oh, okay, so we had this group from Japan, joining us, and we had this other group coming in and working with us in this way, and the girls wrestling has just started in the first ever rankings, and one of our students is second in the state of Indiana. That kind of thing, as like a 1 minute, 1.5 minute video, is easily shared, right? What you want is for people to kind of be in that space where they say, oh, okay, this is something I can share. So they pass it along, they send the link. And it's not so long that people go, oh, okay, I'll come back to it. Because whenever 50 people say, I'll come back to it, some number of them, let's just say 45, don't. All right, because that's just kind of how things tend to work. So as you think about video, think in terms of how you pull the different pieces together so that it's shareable. So social media is something that is very much relies on the visual. So what we talked about with regard to good pictures that teachers have taken as part of their classroom, or that you've got a good video piece together. That's how you get people really discussing things. Let's move on to shared docs. Okay, so one of the things that we've all gotten much more used to over the last decade plus, right, is the idea that you can have a doc built into your browser in some fashion. So this is the kind of thing where there's any number of tools that do this. Maybe you're using something like Office 365 to be able to share a calendar, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of thing to getting that kind of info out there. But of course, don't stop there. What we want when we look at something like shared documents is to begin to think about how do we take what we do to the next level, and how do we share those stories as a part of what we do now. So let's use a non-distance learning example just to get us going. So for example, what you're looking at here is the idea that that a particular school has said, okay, yeah, we've got this need in our community for helping people with clothes and certain kinds of foods, things like this. And so we're going to build something on the school grounds, and this allows us to connect with a lot of families that otherwise we might not be connecting with. It'll help students, get perhaps healthier meals as they're trying to make it from the end of school day to the beginning of next. There's a lot of suffering out there, right? So to whatever extent we can set that up, all the better. Now, the way we've got this set up, looking at this, we've got an argument, right? For, we've got an argument against, and these are arguments from the staff. So the idea is that you could have everybody in a staff meeting talking with each other about, okay, yeah, what we want to do is we want to try this, we want to try that, but those kinds of discussions often don't allow for taking things to the next level in terms of nuance and detail. And if teachers are asked instead to write up their arguments, let's do this for this reason, this is a concern for this reason, and you begin to capture these kinds of things in shared documents, what you end up with is this essentially paper trail of professionalism at your school. You want to be able to point to this. If you are imagining an accreditation visit or something like this, and they come in and they say, tell us more about how you interact with the staff. Well, here are 6 different initiatives from the last 18 months where our staff has engaged in an exploration of whether to go with it or not. And you can also understand what you are avoiding when you do it this way. So one of the problems in a lot of settings is that a message is kind of incompletely given in a face-to-face meeting, and people begin to assume it means something else, and then they get all worked up about what that something else might be, and now you've got drama, and maybe it's completely misplaced. Not that this has any kind of correlation to our national conversation, but just saying. So what we want then is to have people kind of in the space where they're like, okay, let's turn and take a look. What did they say in that written piece? And of course, people are going to be on better behavior as well when they're in kind of this kind of space as well. So if what you need is to be able to turn to the community and say, this is what we're thinking about, then you have ready-made discussion to draw upon, where you can say to the community, this is what we're trying to do, this is our argument for it, here are our concerns. If you have comments, we would love to hear them. If you can engage your community in ways that allow them to feel connected to the school, you're making progress as well. Now, many of these same things can happen as a part of distance learning. So a lot of schools have done a very strong job over the past, probably the past 4 weeks or so, of surveying their community. What has worked for you with distance learning? What has not? How are you looking ahead? So beginning to understand that you've got this set of students who have had great difficulty with shifting to the more self-directed nature of online learning. That happens for sure. But you've also got kids who, separated from the social dynamics of the classroom, have thrived. And if you have some sense of the data there where you're like, okay, yeah, we've got a percentage of kids who are doing this. We've got a percentage of kids who are doing that. How do we help more in what fashion? Having those good survey results makes a difference as well. And as you're planning for the fall, looking back at surveys like that and being able to say, okay, yeah, we know that we have got, say, 21% of families that will not be sending kids to us no matter what we say about school, because maybe there's an immunocompromised person in the house and they're worried about that, about the kid picking something up at school and bringing it. There's any number of things that can be a part of that. And so if you're going to that trouble of getting those stories in a space where you're showing that data from the survey on your website, you have these kind of short summaries that you're putting out in social media, and through some infographics, through images, things like this, you're probably doing a much better job of not only informing the community and building better discussion, but preparing effectively for the fall. Let's keep going and look more specifically at the idea of what video can be for you. So I think we all know that if students are making video, and those videos are videos that are interesting in some fashion, that those are great things to share. It's very easy for us to kind of be in a space of saying, hey, wow, isn't it cool what those kids made, right? That's a great thing. However, don't stop there, right? So in addition to kind of the basic idea of, okay, teachers should be looking at video as a tool, not simply of did you make a video, but how do you use that to really ramp up learning? How do we show stronger academic progress as a function of using video? You also should be doing the kind of thing we are doing at this very moment. So if you're in Teams or Zoom or Jitsi or any of these that are out there that allow you to connect with people in other places, why wouldn't you be connecting them? Like, so this particular screenshot is a session we did with a guy named Leo Johnson in Canada. He was a refugee from Liberia during its civil war, went to Canada, got his education, did really well, and is now running this nonprofit that he started, and they are working to build like the first library and learning center in Liberia. Liberia is a country where there's like one textbook for every 27 kids, right? So that he's doing this, I mean, it's just inspiring. And so we had these 3 kids really kind of early in the school day, connecting with him, talking to him about their projects, the things they're doing, so that they can give him ideas. He's giving them ideas. These are stories of your school. You really want to be in that space of having kids create things that become shareable, and that allow people to get really, really excited about what happens in your school. So use the tools that you've got in a way to build that. So you can get a lot of mileage out of recording different kinds of video connections and having people do this kind of thing. All right. If what we're trying to do is to get kids to make better and better videos, let's remember that one of the things that you'll need to do is make sure you are not limiting your students' experience to, say, one example. So, I can best describe this from the standpoint of what happens in class. Teacher says, all right, guys, we're going to do a video project. The kids are like, ooh, right? And then the teacher makes what I would consider to be a fairly significant mistake and says, let me show you this example of what I think is a great job with this assignment. Well, in showing one example, you've kind of set the stage for a bunch of kids mimicking that one thing, right? So I'd be curious to know, for those of you who are participating right now, just how many of you have done video projects with students at your school in any way, shape, or form? And just put in a yes, maybe describe it a little bit if you want. But what kinds of things have you done to try to get kids telling stories about what happens at your school? So that can be the kind of thing that clubs do to try to get kind of different ideas there. Maybe what you end up with are some really, really good projects from classrooms. It could be that you end up with recordings, kind of like we talked about just a minute ago, through video chat tools. So get those different pieces in as we go. But what this particular document is, and this is something that, happy to get you a link. Again, stay in touch with me if this is of interest to you. Is a set of 24 videos, all made by students. They're just, the idea with all of these was describe something creatively that one might encounter in school. So, you see in set 1 there, Great Sand Dunes National Park. So it's a report on a national park. And then cultural diffusion. What does that mean? What is that concept really? Multiplying integers, which is actually a very clever take on how to do that, as opposed to just like here, do this, do that, right? It's a way of thinking about it. So when you have students watch multiple examples of videos, they end up creating much more interesting things because they can zero in on particular examples and say, oh, I love what they did with that discipline video, right? And how they use the camera angles, and hey, I really liked the stop motion they did in this one, or stuff like that can really yield a lot better. So some good things coming up, in the chat. So intramurals become, video commercials for clubs and activities like intramurals. That's fantastic, Tim. Group presentations, right? And it says, but we used slides only. So, but remember, with PowerPoint, if you have a set of slides, that can become a video really, really easily, right? So you can do it right within PowerPoint. You can use any number of web-based tools for the same purpose. If you have some visuals, whether those visuals are it's artwork or pictures taken or anything like that, it's just very easy to move from there to creating a video. So get lots of different examples in front of students so that they can do that. And stay in touch with me, and I'll get you links to as much of this as you want. So this particular example is a video from the York School in Monterey, California. A very dynamic teacher there, a guy named Kevin Brookhauser, instituted a project he called the 20-time system, the 20-time projects, with his students, where students are creating really interesting projects that are based very specifically on what it is that they're interested in doing. So you have a group of kids who say, we did this to develop more kind of sports opportunities for kids who are in low resource areas of our community. We built a blog in order to share information about these particular health issues. I started studying my native language so I could communicate with my grandmother in ways that I haven't before. And this, in sharing a video like this, where lots of different kids are saying in the space of about 5 to 10 seconds each, this is what I did, the building interest in what it is they're talking about, where it becomes, wow, it's so impressive. It becomes very easy very quickly to kind of be in that space of, man, I would love for my kid to go there. That's the kind of story that can be a part of what you do if you just pull it together, right? Now that's easily done online as well, right? So you can get you can get into video chat tools. You can record kids talking about these things. You can pull those things together, or have a particular go-getter of a video experienced kid to do it as well. You don't need to know how to do every last thing with video. You just need to know that giving the kids the opportunity to do this makes a difference in terms of being able to share those kinds of stories. All right, so there are a number of different resources that I've created for you and that I can get in your hands if this is of interest to you. The first is at nextvista.org/resources. And nextvista.org/resources, let me get that in the chat as well, is a space where there are a lot of free tools in several different categories, but that's not all that's there. There's also one category that is a set of inspirational videos, and I have collected dozens and dozens of videos that are the kinds of things that, if you've had a tough day, maybe what you just need is to watch one of those videos. And they're beautiful stories about people who've done great things for others, who are doing great things for their students, things like that. So feel free to get in there, to look around there, and to see what those stories do for you. And in doing that, remember that if you are telling the stories of your school in such a way that people are responding to that same need to be inspired by videos, you are making connections with your community in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise. So right there in the chat, and as always, feel free to stay in touch, nextvista.org/resources. We also run really good video contests, really good. Of course, that there's no bias in saying that at all. And the one that we've got going now through the fall is one called Service Via Video. And what we want is for kids to tell stories of people who make a difference in their communities. So this is a contest where the kids who put these kinds of things in, the finalists get donations made to the organizations highlighted in the video if they're 501c3s, blah, 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 right? And we have had some wonderful, wonderful videos over time from kids telling about these little nonprofits or these groups, community groups in their communities who have done like great things for the people around them, right? I also, think it's important in telling the stories about your school that you do not limit what it is you talk about to just being about particular student things or particular teacher things. Every member of your team has a story to tell. And this is important. Here's a video that's on YouTube from Kleenex brand. You can imagine that it's a bit of a make you tear up kind of video for doing that. I called A Shining School. And with this video, I mean, it talks about this person who's so important in the lives of these children, not a teacher, right? But somebody who makes wonderful, wonderful things happen, and how that is special for who they are as a school. But remember, you've got bus drivers who they're the first adults who smile at children in the morning and when they pick them up. You've got people serving food in the cafeteria who better know than perhaps anybody else at the school which kids are going hungry at home, right? And who might need a little bit of extra food on their plate and things like that. You've got a team that knows these things. So look at these stories and remember, how do you tell the stories of your entire team? If as a teacher, if as a school leader, you are looking for ways to involve your entire team, you are going to be building the best possible environment for developing the creative confidence of every kid, the academic possibilities for every kid, and that's important. So I hope you will take a look at my newsletter as well. I put out a newsletter every month. The next one is coming out in the next couple of days. And in it, I tell about things we're doing, projects that are going on, and loads and loads and loads of freebies, right? Things that you might want to watch or listen to or read or try, right? So good tools that are out there. The way I see it, teachers are very, very busy people. So, being able to see what somebody else has gathered is kind of a good move. And the July newsletter is coming up. And I also highlight a virtual open house that was done by this really interesting school in San Francisco called Brightworks. It's built around some really amazing stories for what they do. So I hope you'll take a look at that as an example of doing a fantastic job of telling your story to the community. Shameless plug, I also have written some books. So I've written a book called Making Your Teaching Something Special, 50 short chapters on how to become better as a teacher, how that can and how that can happen quickly as well through little things, right? These chapters are 2 to 3 pages long, so you could be wolfing down lunch when you're in person, and say, I think I'll try that for the afternoon class. Totally fine. And then 2 more directed towards school leaders, making your school something special, how you tell your stories as a school, how you ramp up academic learning to become stories, as well as how you make your meetings better as well. And then the National Catholic Education Association published my 3rd book in December called Technology, Teamwork, and Excellence, which is all about building the strongest possible team. That's for any school. And I hope you'll give these a look. If you are interested in staying in touch with me on this, to have me do a quick talk with your team doing a book study, I'm happy to do it for free. That's part of what my little nonprofit is dedicated to making happen. That would be a short talk, of course, but still, happy to do it. I've written a blog. I write a post to a blog called Inspiring Improvement. That's at rushtonh.com, rushtonh.com. I hope you'll give that a look. Stuff for teachers, stuff for school leaders, and for service people as well. If you have questions, I hope you will stick around in order to talk about them with me, because I am happy to do so. I'm going to stick around just as long as there are people with things to share. So you are welcome to do that. And I'll also have office hours coming up later in the month, and so feel free to join those via the Global EdTech Academy program that's going with that. You can reach me most easily via nextvista.org/contact. All right, so I'll get that in there as well, .org/contact. And feel free to drop me a line. You say, hey, I'm really curious about that video you mentioned. Oh, I'd love to learn more about this particular project. Oh, we had this. Can you give me a little bit of advice on that? Totally fine. Just reach out. I will tell you that I answer every email I get eventually. Not always quick, but I give it a good shot. So with that, what I would like to do is come back to what we are doing as a part of this effort. And in so doing, I am going to finish off the recording and then switch to questions. But I want to thank you again for taking part in this particular recording today. I hope that you are excited about some of the things that that you have learned, and that you will find that as we move forward with the different things that we're doing in teams and with the different tools that are now available, you are finding ways to tell stories of your school that will be inspiring both to your students and the adults that make up the larger community as you go. So with that, I will stop the recording. I want to thank you again for joining, and what we'll do is those of you who have joined live, we'll just keep talking. All good. Take care, everybody.